Customization has been at the forefront of fan interest in recent years in Call of Duty, and with a few faltering steps here and there, the approaching Modern Warfare has quite a few players wondering where we may go and what we may see. So today we're going to talk about why the named partner of the upcoming Modern Warfare is the perfect example and why Modern Warfare Remastered had the best customization to date. If you agree, disagree, or whatever it may be in between, feel free to let me know your thoughts, and of course, we can have an open discussion about all of this. Though all is based on my opinion, and I'll explain my point of view throughout the entire video, but whatever your opinion, totally valid, and I totally respect it. But for now, let's talk about Modern Warfare Remastered. Modern Warfare Remastered had some big shoes to fill because it was a more so older classic game being brought up to a completely different industry at this point. Whenever the game launched in 2007, there wasn't near as much focus on customization, on cosmetic items, or anything like that, so it was definitely a big point of a question mark for a lot of players before the game actually launched. Now, perhaps one of the biggest tasks and things that worried players going forward into the launch of Modern Warfare Remastered was how these cosmetics would be handled in particular, because just a couple of years before, we had seen some pretty crazy things. Advanced Warfare, we had some things like a crazy clown or a gingerbread man as a cosmetic item. Black Ops 3, we had some zany and out there and really bright customization items as well. And so with Modern Warfare Remastered, the big question mark was, well, would they take it out of that rooted in realism that Modern Warfare prided itself on? Being a more gritty and more modern vibe, you wouldn't see obviously those futuristic and super over the top and bright items in regular customization. Other big areas of concern came down to, well, supply drops, because Black Ops 3 had an egregious system. Advanced Warfare introduced them, of course, well, the rest is history. But the big area of concern was, don't ruin my classic with supply drops. So you can see where the task was a very tall one to try and introduce more content into Modern Warfare Remastered to keep it a more so fresh and newer version than just a direct copy and paste, as well as to tread lightly to not disrespect or demean the game at its core as a classic Call of Duty title. Fortunately, Raven Software had a pretty good answer to all of these questions. One of the big things added to Modern Warfare Remastered was that of collections. This was absolutely integral when breaking up the loot pool, because like we saw with Black Ops 3, if you throw everything all into one giant loot pool, the odds of getting something you want are slim to none, and that's at best. Now, contents offered up two different ways you could look at the contents within Modern Warfare Remastered. You could think of collections as breaking them down into operation specific, where even to this day, you have the ability to buy 3 different supply drop types with your in-game currency or your actual COD points, or you could take a look at the collections being what you could actually view them as, the collections of each operation and each little limited time event, what they brought to the table. Now, Modern Warfare Remastered had a ton of content in the loot pool, but you had better odds than, say, Black Ops 3 or even Advanced Warfare because you had multiple breaks in that loot pool. There are 3 main, to this day, loot pools in Modern Warfare Remastered. If you wanted to get something from Copperhead, you could end up getting your own drops and you could get those items. If you wanted something from Lion Strike and some gear there, you had your own drops. And same thing, lastly, for if you wanted Arctic Wolf gear. Again, you had your own drops for that collection. What's weird is that not too long ago, this was pretty much the norm for how customization items and loot went in Call of Duty and looked to go further into the future. World War II expanded on this slightly with the events, but differed because it still had one larger loot pool of Operation Overlord that everything funneled into. When it comes to breaking down individual items based off their collections, World War II didn't offer specific drops to readily be available for, say, things like Copperhead, Lion Strike, and Arctic Wolf gear. If you were to directly translate that to what World War II would have needed to do, it would have been something where you'd break up Operation Overlord, that regular loot pool, and not just the collection specific items, into at least the third. Modern Warfare Remastered, you could and can still select a drop of your choice of collection: Copperhead, Lion Strike, and Arctic Wolf. Another reason why I think Modern Warfare Remastered has the best is because, well, it kind of hits home for me whenever I think about things that are worthwhile in a loot pool. Camos were something absolutely abundant within Modern Warfare Remastered, but the nice part is these were rooted in believable patterns. The biggest thing I see with, say, Black Ops 4 and the complaints about some customization previously in other titles is that they're way too over the top. We already referenced that gingerbread man and that clown outfit in Advanced Warfare, things like like that, or other places they're too flashy in some arcade war simulator. It makes absolutely no sense. So while you have to bear in mind that Call of Duty is an arcade shooter and the science of color theory and grabbing attention for either playtime or sales, that's still something that is a driving force behind the creation of some of this stuff. It's still a totally valid thought that maybe there is this fine line that shouldn't be crossed. But to me, Modern Warfare Remastered did a perfect balance of quality, quantity, and aesthetic. For example, there were between Operation Copperhead, Days of Summer, Lion Strike, Shamrock and Awe, and Arctic Wolf, a total of 345 camos available. Nearly 350 camos. Not even just loot items, but camos, things that were worthwhile. We haven't seen any number even close to that outside of Infinite Warfare, which had 147 camos in the Quartermaster selection and maybe about 160, 175 through all the categories of camos. Not even in Black Ops 4, where we have things individually parted out for reactive camos and everything like that, do we have even near that many camos. And the best part is that they were all completely earnable in-game in Modern Warfare Remastered. Sure, there were supply drops as a main form of loot distribution, but each duplicate granted salvage that you could end up individually purchasing the items from the depot if you wanted something in particular. You didn't have to go through any sequential order or anything like that. You could just go find it, and if you had the amount of in-game currency for it, you could buy it right there and use it on whatever weapon it applied for. And while we didn't have a contraband stream per se, it may have actually been a faster way to get some of these camos you wanted in this system as a direct in-game currency purchase, as opposed to wait 15 hours or so of in-game time to get tier 15 and that camo that you wanted specifically laid out for you. But let's talk quality though, because while I personally think the most valuable things in a first-person shooter as cosmetics are camos, you can totally disagree, and that's totally fine, and I respect that opinion entirely. But talking the quality of the items and the camos, the nice part is that none of these were over the top. Again, one of the biggest things that I remember about Modern Warfare Remastered pre-launch of that was how it was going to be handled cosmetically, given that recent years kind of showcased a little bit of a way too out there comical and whimsical approach to it. People wanted something that was believable so that it didn't, again, tarnish that name of the classic of Modern Warfare. None of these were bright pink or animated camos, no unicorns hanging off the guns. And while I think that in some regard having some fun with that stuff isn't all that bad, because at the end of the day it's a game, I personally don't care about realism in an arcade shooter, but I recognize there are people that don't find that stuff appealing at all. And plus, with a gritty realistic atmosphere of the current conflict in a way of Modern Warfare, there were camos that were made to be hardened, tough, and not look like a child's playroom. Towards the end of Operation Copperhead, sure, we got a few camos that got a bit more exciting and a bit more out there, but they at the very core still never left the sphere of, well, that's definitely way too much. We never saw and never would have thought of seeing a unicorn on a gun, a bunny rabbit outfit, none of that stuff that, while in other games could be totally fine and work because it was a more fun arcade and less serious vibe, it just didn't fit well with Modern Warfare's aesthetic, and Raven handled it pretty well. And ultimately, I think that's a way that we can sum up all of the customization and loot within Modern Warfare Remastered. I think that Raven actually handled this pretty gracefully. Not only, again, just in terms of aesthetic, but also in quantity, quality, and other things in between. Black Ops 4 had an absolute boatload of stickers, calling cards, tags, emblems, weapon charms, and other filler malarkey. Hell, even the first and second split of Spectre Rising ended up only having 3 weapons total, a few uniforms, and absolutely no camos. Everything else, about 60, 70, and maybe even 80 items were calling cards, stickers, and tags. Other games like World War II for a time had a ton of filler content in the way of pistol grips. Black Ops 3 had an absolute metric ton of attachment variants, calling cards, emblems, and parted out camos as filler. And admittedly, I didn't open my drops in Infinite Warfare really to care all that much about the supply drop RNG as much as the other games, but when it came to Modern Warfare, yes, there still were calling cards and emblems as well as even reticles, but when it came to the loot pool, it wasn't really all that terrible. It even was, like I said, maybe even a hot topic as it may be, was handled more gracefully because you had less filler content than other titles and even more items worthwhile. While some things were only collection rewards, like some weapons or some massive uniform collections, like how Captain Price was an overall collection reward, others were of course available with in-game currency, but yes, others did show up in the loot pool. But coming back to my mention of in the first-person perspective, the only worthwhile content being camos and things you can actually see in that first-person perspective, Well, Modern Warfare Remastered actually had the most of that, not only just in Camos, but a lot of other places elsewhere. We ended up seeing that, of course, we did have those 345 camos, but we also saw a bunch of things added in, one of those being a new feature known as weapon kits, where there were 63 of those available across the board for the different classifications of weapons. This was a new feature that added even more customization to the base class weaponry, which could be paired up with your camos and make actually some pretty cool combination camos, adding even more in the way of first-person perspective content. DLC weapons, again, were another one that was a ton added in. 43 DLC weapons were added throughout the life cycle of Modern Warfare Remastered. That's more than Black Ops 4 even launched with. In fact, that 27 weapons that Black Ops 4 launched with are only 62% of the DLC weapons that Modern Warfare Remastered had. Not even with what it launched, but just the DLC weapons. And the nice part with how DLC weapons were handled within Modern Warfare Remastered, very similarly to how World War II has done them, and of course, as we've mentioned a couple of times here on the channel already across a number of different videos, even though you could get some of them out of a loot pool in which you could end up pulling them out of supply drops, a lot of them were specifically only collection rewards, meaning that you could end up grinding them out in-game organically without having to spend a penny. And plus, like World War II again, there were plenty of times where I jumped on and got weapons the very first day that they dropped, simply because, well, I had the credits saved up. I just simply was able to jump in and buy them first thing. And that grinding is something that rewards everybody without any additional charge whatsoever. It's not like you had to buy the season pass to gain access to them. It's not like you had to buy $1 million worth of supply drops to get a chance at it, or it's not anything where you had to put 100 hours of in-game playtime in after the operation or new content was added in, like you have to with the contraband stream. You could simply jump in and your past playtime from the past operation would give you new things up front. And well, if those things aren't enough, well, we still add a bunch of other cool things like uniforms and characters that, again, were handled pretty well, just like camos in my opinion. There were subtle facial changes or war paints or masks or even the occasional overall skin, again, like Captain Price being added in as that Copperhead bounty collection in which you have to complete all of Operation Copperhead, but none of these were, again, over the top like a bunny outfit for an operator or anything like a gingerbread or a crazy clown costume. They were all rooted in a realistic approach to the cosmetics and were easily obtainable like other items at hand. Again, like with your in-game earnable currency with, say, things out of the saved supply drops you may have or any other number of things in between. And ultimately, a large majority of those customization items were actually worthwhile. Again, I'm not even a huge person in terms of outfits, but some of the stuff that you saw were pretty cool operator changes. But while sure, there was a ton of stuff that you probably didn't care about, the sheer number of camos, the sheer number of kits that weren't game-changing, but were just other ways to be cosmetic variations. Some things, sure, like melee variants made it into the game, but those are purely cosmetic again. To me, all that stuff made it definitely worthwhile and worth grinding out. And nothing was really insanely over the top except for maybe one or two things that may have cut it close. But to me, this was the way the customization should have been done, and again, was a nice way to blend the now and the love of cosmetics in the gaming industry with a simple classic from 2007, meshing both eras and adaptations of the game without terribly ruining themselves. It seemed to me to be a respectful homage to the classic while still being rooted in plausibility and keeping up with other things to offer players for rewards for grinding, or if they just wanted to customize their operator a little further. Now, ultimately, I think that Modern Warfare Remastered has done it the best. I hope that carries over into the now Call of Duty 2019 title, Modern Warfare from Infinity Ward, because, well, again, with seemingly another marketing push towards realism here with Modern Warfare, I don't think we're going to have uniforms that are insanely over the top or anything like that, or camos that will morph your gun. But in terms of how they're handled, well, I hope Modern Warfare Remastered is honestly the basic building blocks for the system going forward. Collections that allow players to in-game organically unlock things just with their playtime, or if they really want to, they can pitch a buck or two here to get a camo. But that's where I stand here. That's why I think Modern Warfare Remastered had the best customization, and hopefully we see some things return from that system going forward. But I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular that you think maybe beats out Modern Warfare Remastered? Do you agree, disagree, and in what way, shape, or form? Let me know why down there in the comment section down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Call of Duty, whether that be Black Ops 4, the upcoming Modern Warfare content in the next few months here, whatever it may be. Feel free to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best place to get kind of come outside of YouTube, practically live on both those. So if you guys want to start up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. What I'll say now, thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.